Burlesque by Kamari333. Chapter 34. By the Collar, Part 3. Dance kissed him. Dance was kissing Red. He had to focus on that. Red's collar was sparking angrily, the LV charged energy so close, too close, like boiling fat in the bottom of a pan, still on the stove. Vicious and promising, it was going to hit him. But no, Dance wasn't going to pull away now, wasn't going to even think about pulling away now, because for this one moment, Red was exactly where he wanted him, calm and happy and right where he was supposed to be. Dance breathed him in, that fresh, icy chill that should have had him shaking, the lingering scent of sweat and alcohol, and that delicious promise of watermelon and safety. He distantly heard himself make some sort of noise, not that Dance was paying much attention to anything except Red and that fucking collar. Opening his teeth to demand Red let him in to taste what was supposed to be his. Red, finally being agreeable for once, parted his obscenely sharp teeth, the ruby glow of his tongue just peeking out from behind them, before Dance surged his own forward and took control. And Red just let him, even though Dance knew he could fight back if he wanted, just gave him free rein. Dance drank in the taste of watermelon, mustard, bourbon, whiskey, and malt liquor. He hummed, pulling back as he licked his own teeth. "What's with you and your obsession with drinking gasoline?" Red snickered. "Are you really complaining, wine snob?" Lush. The gentle amusement that quivered in Red's voice as much as the air around him had something warm twist in Dance's core. He leaned in again, defiantly ignoring the spittle of LV-fueled magic crackling around Red's throat as he again stole control of his tongue, tasting Red's evening on him, stealing what remained, replacing it with whatever essence his own tongue secreted, leaving his own mark, vicious and demanding and rough, just as he would have with lust. Red tensed under Dance's hands, the magic holding him together suddenly strung tighter, the hand on the back of his skull clawing ever so slightly, not enough to hurt him by a wide margin, and not trying to pull him away, but the change was noticeable. And Dance could feel him struggle with wariness and trepidation. Dance slowed his assault, gentled it, and wow, okay, that worked so well? Red immediately relaxed, his apprehension evaporating in moments. Note to self, keep it gentle. Oh, there were so many ways he could keep it gentle, and it was in that moment that Dance realized he had been shifting closer, because the collar's intent finally made contact, an icy needle of it piercing his sternum. Dance's whole body went rigid, and he reared back on reflex. It hurt, it was cold, and it hurt. His whole body hurt, he was hurt, and the world was red and gold and loud, and the song was wrong, and he was panicking, and it was cold, so cold, too cold, it hurt. And the stupid fucking song wouldn't shut up. It was wrong. Everything was wrong, and his ribs hurt, and he was warm. Dance felt the world come back into focus, blinking his sight back. He wasn't shaking exactly, but there was tension all over his body, like any little thing could set him off again in a spiral. There was a warm pressure at his back, something soft and heavy draped over his shoulders and skull, obscuring his vision. A source of warmth and love and worry was at his side, a gentle hand rubbing at his back under the coat. Because that's what it was, a coat that smelled like liquor and smoke and sweat and leather. Red's coat. A low, soft voice murmured reassurances, the only sound in the room besides Dance's own soul beating hard in his skull. Dance fumbled to push the hood of the coat up off his head, taking in the scene before him. There were a number of bones strewn around the room, a tight cluster of them sticking out of the couch where Red had been sitting. Dance was on the floor now. When did he get on the floor? Another tight cluster was embedded into the wall off to one side, cracking the drywall. Dance tried to put the pieces together as to why Red wasn't there. "How are you feeling, baby?" Lust's voice asked, voice oozing with the concern and affection he was steadily radiating, supporting Dance from inside and out. Dance turned and buried his face in Lust's shoulder, finally shaking, his composure finally breaking. How was he feeling? He was furious. Dance clutched to Lust, nuzzling in his warmth and that welcoming sense of home, reveling in the steadying sense of safety radiating from both collars, a constant reminder that he was fine, that he wasn't back there again, that he should be okay. It wasn't fair to blame Boss's collar for Dance's failures. It was his own fault he was broken. His own fault he reacted like that. His own fault he was a useless failure who couldn't even keep himself pulled together 5 goddamn minutes to kiss his own date mate. None of that shit. Red's voice rumbled from across the room. Dance looked up just in time to see Red saunter into the living room from the kitchen, 2 mugs of something steaming in his hands. He sat down cross-legged on the floor, reaching out slowly to set the mugs next to Lust and scoot them closer, keeping well away from Dance as he worked. "You don't gotta feel guilty for freaking out." "I don't..." Dance started to lie, his words crumbling to dust in his mouth as his eyelids fell on the faint discoloration on Red's arm, a fresh cut where marrow was just beginning to scab and dry. Dance felt his traitorous soul shrivel in horror at the sight. Red slapped his hand over his humerus, covering the wound, but Dance had already seen it. Red smirked, sweat sliding down his skull and most of the rest of him. "Heh, ain't what it looks like." "I hit you." "Just a graze, barely nicked." "I hit you." Dance curled up tighter against Lust, finally noticing that any signal from Red's soul was painfully absent. I could have... Dance clutched at his chest, the line of agony burning stronger, throbbing, a reminder of his own sins. "Don't be stupid. Free XP like you couldn't dust me if you tried." Red grumbled, avoiding Dance's eyes. "I damn well could have. You've only got 1 HP. "Need to land a good hit on me first." "Which I did since you're leaking fucking marrow." "Let's not make this a pissing contest, please." Lust's voice picked up, pulling Dance closer to him. Dance felt his exasperation, how tired he was, on top of a steady, throbbing layer of love and self-disgust. It was an accident. It was an accident. An accident. It was an accident, and it almost got his boyfriend killed because that's all Dance is now, an accident waiting to happen, a useless, broken, out-of-control mess that couldn't bond with his own brother or kiss his own boyfriend or... It hurt. Lust, still that steady, reliable warmth, was a stark contrast, filled with concern and trepidation and grief that was Dance's fault. It was all Dance's fault, because he couldn't stay in control. He couldn't hold it together for 5 goddamn minutes. "Quit beating yourself up," Red muttered. "Ain't like you got a defense for this shit." "Well, I should," Dance snapped. "I earned it. It's not fair." He didn't know what he was talking about by this point, be it Red or a defense against LV. Perhaps both. Perhaps neither. And wasn't it the sickest joke that he had? He'd earned it in spades. And maybe, in some twisted way, he hated that he didn't have it anymore. Dance ground his teeth, fighting back the burn in his sockets. Maybe that was why he hated monsters with LV, because beyond the fear and the self-preservation, there was still that deep-seated jealousy that they got to numb themselves. They got to have that fire in their marrow. They got to live their lives day to day without feeling their sins on their back. Like it was nothing, like they could just walk off having dust. Blood, blood, so much blood. How did they have so much blood? They were so small. On their hands. And he really didn't need this self-reflective bullshit right now. Make it stop. Leave him alone. It hurts. Where does it hurt, baby? Lust asked, pulling Dance closer, distress mounting, weaving through his love like a serpent in water. Dance tightened his grip on the fabric of his hoodie, clutching over the searing pain etched across his ribcage on reflex. He hadn't meant to say that. He really was falling apart at the seams. "Answer the question, kitten," Red growled, claws flexing in his lap, itching to get a hold of something. "Where's it hurt?" "Nunya," Dance muttered, turning away from Red to hide in Lust's shoulder again. He'd made enough of an ass of himself today. He'd hit Red. What right did he have to complain about pain? It hadn't even actually happened. "Oh, well." Lust cooed softly against Dance's skull, a spark of playfulness his only warning. "Then I'll just have to kiss everything better, won't I?" And then he was kissing him, light and sweet and loving, everywhere. Little skeletal butterfly kisses all over Dance's face, his neck, going down to his shoulder, right over the scar, and oh god, it hurt, but it felt so good. Dance couldn't quite bite back the yelp at the contact. Lust's heated, warm, loving intent mixing painfully with the burning chill that was surging up and down along the scar, like the killing intent that had made the strike over and over and over and over, had come alive again, and was fighting against the anathema that was love. Dance clutched tighter to Lust, holding him there, ignoring Lust's confusion and alarm and focusing on the love still coming strong. The heat, the warmth, along with the pulse of protectiveness around his throat. All the things that helped him remember it wasn't real, it never happened, it wasn't real. Lust relaxed against him, nuzzling, staying exactly where Dance needed him to be. The pain started to recede, first to a dull ache, then to nothing. Dance squeezed his socket shut, trying to quell his obnoxious rattling next. Broken. Why was he broken? It wasn't fair. He hated it. A cold hand curled tenderly, gingerly, around Dance's cheek, wiping away moisture Dance hadn't even realized had leaked out. He quickly brought one hand up to cling to it, to hold it here, so its owner couldn't escape so easily. "How do you do it?" Dance found himself asking, the question one he had wanted to scream for ages. "Do what?" Red asked, keeping his voice low, like he was afraid speaking too loud would knock Dance over. Overly considerate asshole. Just... Dance fumbled for the words, clutching to Red's long, powerful fingers tighter. "The same hand you're using to be all gentle and nice with." Wiping away his tears, being supporting, all that mushy crap Dance didn't have the words for. "You've used it to rip someone's throat out. Used it to crush someone to dust. You've killed with this hand. How do you just turn around and keep living like it's nothing?" "Drinking helps." Red huffed, and Dance could tell he was only half joking. Dance found himself laughing, shaking with it, clutching Lust and Red both tighter, barely noticing Lust's bubble of amusement and fretfulness and hope. Because for once, Dance was drowning in his own emotions. His shaking didn't stop, but his laughter choked off into a gross, wet noise, a breathy wheeze that might have been the skeletal equivalent of a hiccup. He tried to keep his voice steady, even, low and casual. He tried. Usually he could succeed without much effort, years and years of practice having that effect. Dance was rather proud of how easily, how well, he could keep his composure most days. Today was apparently not most days. His voice came out pathetic, damp, slurred to his own hearing, the shadow of a whine gaining power over it as he spoke. "Why can't I?" Dance knew he kept talking after that, kept going and going, word vomit of questionable coherency spilling from him in a wave. He ranted and raved about how it wasn't fair that the human made him watch as they killed all of his friends, his brother, over and over and over. He snarled about how it wasn't fair that they kept pushing and pushing and pushing until he had to kill them. He sobbed about how it wasn't fair that they just got right back up after their blood had been everywhere, all over him, acrid and cloying and red, and kept on pushing until they cut him down. He cried about how it wasn't fair, how they did it over and over and over again and again, killing, making him kill, then killing him, a sick, twisted pattern, a barbaric dance that broke him and stole his song. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that they got to do that, to take that part of him that he shared with his brother, the motif, the melody that they shared with each other, that proved their bond, and erase it, replacing it with something vicious and foreign that he hated. He couldn't dance anymore, because if he did, then everyone would know that his stats were a lie and he was a beast, a freak, something to be shunned and reviled. He was alone with anger and pain, and nobody to vent it upon, because the fucking human went and became a goddamn hero, the underground's precious fucking angel. And Dance was left broken, with the guilt that he had killed a child even if his stats said otherwise, with the guilt that he couldn't even die with his integrity intact, with the guilt that if he was just going to cave and kill them anyway, he couldn't even get off his ass and do it before they hurt Papyrus, because he was a coward, a broken piece of garbage, and hurting with nobody to turn to because nobody else fucking remembered. And he couldn't even tell anyone, and why was he telling them this? They weren't gonna believe him. Nobody would believe him. I'll fucking kill him. Red's snarl broke through Dance's maelstrom of emotions and sobbing, and Dance realized he was surrounded by safety, by that wall of ice and by Red's arms. Somehow, in the midst of his breakdown, Red had pulled Dance into his lap. One of Red's claws was looped around Dance's collar, pulling with a steady, gentle pressure that emphasized the surge of his protective, indignant intent. Whatever method Red had been using to mask his emotions was gone, but the visceral protectiveness and righteous fury, a soul-curdling bloodlust aimed at the human who had put Dance in this position, came through clearly in his voice alone. "No, sweetheart, we can't kill them." Lust's lilting voice admonished, a saccharine sweetness to it that would have put Dance's teeth on edge if it had been directed at him. Lust was snuggled in Dance's lap, arms slipped under Red's coat, encircling him. His warmth and love and undeniable force that came tangled part and par with a cruel ribbon of bitter resentment and righteous fury that Dance didn't need words to know weren't directed at him. Death would be too quick, too easy. They wouldn't learn. Dance relaxed back into Red's chest, surrounded by his crackling wall of LV-laced influence, his hand still carefully cradling Dance's jaw, Lust practically laying on top of him, purring softly and pressing affectionate little kisses to his shoulder. Dance was sandwiched between two very different kinds of predators, both of which were nearly blind with rage. And he had never felt safer in his entire goddamn life. Lust just lay there, holding Dance, nuzzling, offering what little he could in terms of support. Dance had been nearly incomprehensible, between the screaming and the crying and the fact he wouldn't stop to breathe, or even string his thoughts together in a way that made sense. Not that Lust hadn't been able to understand him well enough. He had. Lust understood painfully well what had happened. It wasn't such a big leap when he thought about what his own human friend was capable of. What drove him crazy was how irresponsible that little brat had been with their power. Who raised that child? What kind of parent lets their kid get away with that behavior? If nobody else would discipline the little brat, then Lust would do it himself. But now was not the time for that. Now it was time to try and reassure his boyfriend, calm him, make him understand that it was going to be okay, that he was going to be okay. And maybe keep Red weighed down so he didn't go tearing through the city to eviscerate every non-binary child in 100 miles. Lust didn't need empathy to know Red was well and truly incensed. It was heartwarming to see how much had changed between the three of them, how Red genuinely cared about Dance's well-being now. Red's hand never left Dance's cheek, scratching idly at the joint of his jaw. Red's other hand settled around Dance's lumbar, a cushion for Lust to press against. He rocked steadily from side to side, a slow, comforting rhythm. Each cycle had a little bit more of Dance's tension bleeding away. Dance had stopped crying, coming to tense, unsteady silence. His eyelids were extinguished, the discoloration around his sockets still fresh. Dance still had a firm hold of both Red's wrist and Lust's skull, tight and desperate and trembling. At least he'd stopped mumbling apologies. Lust pressed one last kiss to Dance's shoulder, wondering if maybe there was a reason it was so sensitive, if perhaps Dance had more in common with Red than Lust had ever realized, before shifting back just enough to snag one of those mugs of tea Red had brought in earlier. He tested it, finding it was still plenty warm, before offering it to Dance. "Baby, here, you'll feel better with a little something." Dance hesitated. Lust saw the problem after a moment. Dance had his hands full, keeping hold of the two of them, and he wasn't ready to let go yet. "We're not going anywhere, baby, except to bed." And Lust wasn't going to ask for a damn thing tonight from his shaken, hurt date mate, because for once it was going to be about Dance's needs and not his. Dance needed calm and comfort, and for Lust to not be a selfish, greedy brat. Dance slid his hand down to squeeze at Lust's shoulder, once, twice. Then he took the mug and chugged it. "I feel like garbage," Dance mumbled, eyelids blinking back to life in his sockets, small and faint, but clear. "You look like shit," Red agreed. "My head hurts. Happens when you start bawling." "Sorry." "Don't you never fucking apologize for that shit." Red took the now empty mug from Dance and set it aside. "And don't you never think it ain't safe to do that shit with us." "It's okay to be hurt," Lust assured him, snuggling back into Dance's lap, pressing as close as he could manage, knowing how much Dance seemed to like it. "We would never think less of you for this. Lust took a deep breath. Maybe it was okay to say it. Say it. Say it. "We love you." Dance's sockets crinkled at the edges, color and moisture building on the rims in that way Lust knew meant he was fighting back another bout of tears, likely because he had had enough of them for the day, or month, or lifetime. Knowing Dance, he probably never wanted to show weakness of any kind. "I know." From someone else, that might have sounded dismissive or like a rejection. But the way Dance said it, soft, almost hoarse, pitching upward and down like he was trying to right a creature as it attempted to buck him off, his eyelids warbling in shape like they were being seen from underwater, Lust knew better. He knew it meant that Dance knew. He knew that Lust loved him, that it wasn't just some empty platitude, and that meant something. "The both of you can pick up being all weepy and shit in the bedroom," Red grumbled, looking away. "Get the fuck up already. The floor is bad for your back." "We aren't being weepy," Dance hissed, but his heart obviously wasn't in it. Lust giggled, wiping his own sockets before pulling to his feet, offering Dance a hand up. Dance took it, letting go of Red to clutch the coat closed around his throat, holding it in place on his shoulders as he steadied himself. Lust led him into the bedroom, checking over his shoulder to make sure Red was going to follow. Red picked up the last mug of tea, taking it first to the kitchen before joining them. Lust snuggled happily into Dance's arms. Dance held him tight, but remained tense and alert until Red joined them. Red settled on Dance's other side like it was any other night, and Dance just happened to have the middle spot. Lust had to admit the familiarity was soothing. Dance dozed off in moments, burrowed between them. "We gotta do something about his," Red whispered, fumbling with the right terminology. "His thing." "I think it's dancing, sweetheart." Lust murmured back, wiping a bit of sweat from Dance's skull, watching him sleep off the last of his anxiety. I think dancing is important somehow. Something about a song? He sucks ass at telling stories. That's why he has us. Red chuckled, his one hand resting against Lust's zygomatic, a comforting chill that had Lust's sockets fluttering shut. I'll figure something out. We will. Hey guys, Mel here. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. I look forward to bringing you the next chapter. Bye!